Tennis has given us some of the greatest sporting triumphs of all time. Federer's grace at Wimbledon, Nadal's sheer dominance at Roland Garros, Serena rewriting the record books, Novak's machine-like consistency, the list goes on. But for every fairy tale run, there's the flip side. The collapses, the chokes, and the careers defined not by what they won, but by what slipped through their fingers. These are the moments that sting, the how did that happen storylines that live forever in tennis history. So let's count down the 10 biggest Grand Slam failures you'll ever see. Robin Soderling. In 2009, Robin Soderling produced one of the wildest shocks the sport has ever seen. At the French Open, he faced Rafael Nadal, the king of clay. Nadal had never lost at Roland Garros. His record was 31-0, and opponents usually looked helpless trying to break him down. Soderling flipped the script. He flattened out his forehand, went for broke on the backhand, and refused to play the patient grind that Nadal thrived on. 4 sets later, Nadal was out. The impossible had happened, and Soderling had the win of his life. That should have been the start of something huge. He went on to reach the final that year, where Federer stopped him. A year later, he reached the final again, but Nadal erased him in straight sets. After that, his time at the top ended almost as quickly as it began. By 2011, health problems forced him out of tennis, and he never came back. Soderling is remembered for one thing above all else. He was the first man to beat Nadal at Roland Garros. The crazy part is that no one has ever done it before or since with that kind of fearless aggression. He broke the code, but his body broke down before he could cash in. Dinara Safina. Dinara Safina's career is one of the toughest cases of almost but not quite. Between 2008 and 2009, she reached 3 slam finals. She lost all of them. Around the same time, she climbed to world number 1, which should have been a mark of dominance. Instead, it turned into ammo for critics who ripped her for never winning a major. Her game was built for power. She had a heavy serve and ground strokes that could blow players off the court. But in the biggest matches, her nerves got in the way. When the pressure rose, so did the errors. She looked tight and it cost her. The label stuck. Safina became the face of the so-called slamless number, 1-inch debate where fans argued that rankings didn't mean much without a Grand Slam trophy. She never shook that reputation. By 2011, back injuries ended her career early. Safina had the weapons and the results to be remembered as a major champion, but her window closed fast. Instead, she's remembered as the top-ranked player who never sealed the deal when it mattered most. David Nalbandian. David Nalbandian had every shot in the book. Slices, topspin drives, touch volleys, and an ability to redirect the ball anywhere. His shot making made him dangerous on any surface against any opponent. In 2002, at just 20 years old, he reached the Wimbledon final. He lost to Hewitt, but it looked like the first step toward many more. It wasn't. That would be the only slam final he ever played. Nalbandian had peaks that showed what he could do. The best was in 2007 at the Madrid Masters when he beat Federer, Nadal, and Yankovich in succession. Nobody else was taking out that trio back to back to back. But that version of Nalbandian never showed up for 7 straight matches at a slam. His fitness wasn't always there. Injuries dragged him down. At times, his focus did too. He could beat the best in the world one day, then collapse against a journeyman in the next round. The talent was undeniable, but the consistency wasn't. Nalbandian is remembered less for trophies and more for what he could have been. On his best days, he looked like a slam winner. The problem was he never put enough of those days together when it counted. Yankovich. Jelena Yankovich built her game around defense. She wasn't blowing opponents off the court with power. She was dragging them into long rallies, running down every ball and forcing mistakes. Her style frustrated big hitters. On her best days, she could turn a clean winner into a scramble and flip the point on its head. Her breakthrough chance came at the 2008 US Open. Yankovich finally cracked through to a slam final, and across the net stood Serena Williams. That's about the toughest assignment you can get. Yankovich fought hard, even pushed Serena into long rallies, but Serena found the gear that champions always seem to have: straight sets. Yankovich's shot at glory was gone. The sting wasn't just that one final. It was the pattern. While Yankovich reached 6 Grand Slam semifinals across her career, she climbed all the way to number 1 in the world rankings in 2008. That ranking was supposed to announce her as a slam champion in waiting. Instead, it became a reminder of what never came. What held her back? Part of it was her serve, which never reached the level of the top hitters. Part of it was nerves in big moments, matches where she was right there but couldn't close. She was always consistent, always deep in tournaments, But when the title was on the line, she fell short. Yankovich retired without a Grand Slam, and that's her legacy. One of the toughest grinders of her generation, admired for consistency, but forever missing the one trophy that defines careers. Thomas Berdych. Thomas Berdych was built to wreck brackets. Tall, powerful, and armed with flat ground strokes that ripped through the court, he could take down anyone on a given day. Federer, taken out at Wimbledon 2010. Nadal, beaten at the Australian Open. Djokovic, outslugged in Rome and Wimbledon. When Berdych was on, he made even the big three look human. But his problem was never talent, it was timing. Wimbledon 2010 was his golden ticket. Berdych blasted Federer in the quarterfinals, knocking out the defending champ in 4 sets. He followed that up by bullying Djokovic off the court in the semifinals. Suddenly, Berdych stood one match away from immortality. His opponent in the final was Nadal, who looked vulnerable earlier in the event. It should have been Berdych's day. Instead, he froze. The power game vanished. Nadal crushed him in straight sets. No fire, no belief. Just a flat performance on the biggest stage of his life, and that was it. Berdych never made another Slam final in his 17-year career. He racked up 13 titles, spent years inside the top 10, and was always considered dangerous. But when the trophies that matter most were on the line, he couldn't finish. He was capable of beating the giants, and capable of lifting the prize himself, Andy Roddick. Andy Roddick had everything you'd want in a champion. The monster serve that could hit 150 miles per hour, the forehand that could end points in 2 shots, the confidence and charisma to carry American tennis after Sampras retired. He looked destined for greatness, and early on it seemed that way. Roddick won the 2003 US Open at age 21, blasting his way through the draw. Analysts thought it was the first of many. But then, Roger Federer showed up and slammed the door shut. Roddick reached 4 more Slam finals. All 4 were against Federer. All 4 were losses. Wimbledon 2009 was the worst heartbreak. Roddick played the match of his life, raining down 27 aces, refusing to be broken until the very end. The 5th set turned into a marathon, going all the way to 16-14. Roddick had set points in earlier sets. He had chances, but Federer survived every one of them and broke Roddick in the final game. Afterwards, Roddick summed it up with one unforgettable line. "I threw the kitchen sink at him, but he went to the bathroom and got the tub." That match defined his career. Roddick wasn't a failure by normal standards. 32 titles, a Slam, years inside the top 10. Without Federer, Roddick might have owned Wimbledon. With Federer in the way, he had to settle for 1 Slam and a lot of what-ifs. Martina Hingis was supposed to be unstoppable. By the age of 18, she already had 5 Grand Slam singles titles and looked destined to rewrite the record books. Her tactical brain, flawless timing, and feel for the game were years ahead of her age. She became world number. 1 at 16. Unreal. But then came Paris, 1999. Hingis faced Steffi Graf in the French Open final. She led by a set and a break, and it looked like the crown was hers. Then the wheels fell off in spectacular fashion. Hingis argued with the umpire, disputed line calls, even walked off the court at one point. The crowd, firmly behind Graf, booed her mercilessly. When she returned, the mental damage was done. Graf stormed back and Hingis completely crumbled. She ended the match in tears, needing to be consoled by her mother. That loss wasn't just one match. It broke her relationship with the French Open forever. Hingis never won in Paris, never recovered her aura of invincibility, and despite her early brilliance, she finished with only 5 majors. For someone that good, that young, it feels like unfinished business. Lleyton Hewitt was built on fighting. He wasn't the biggest hitter, but he was lightning quick, relentless, and never backed down from a scrap. In 2001, he became the youngest men's world number, 1 at just 20 years old. That same year, he won the US Open, then backed it up with Wimbledon in 2002. He even finished 2 seasons as year-end number 1. For a brief stretch, Hewitt looked untouchable. But here's where it all fell apart: the timing. After 2002, the tennis world shifted. Federer arrived, Nadal followed, and suddenly Hewitt's style looked like it belonged to another era. His counterpunching and grinding worked against his own generation, but against Federer's shot-making and Nadal's intensity, it wasn't enough. Hewitt still put himself in positions to win. 4 times he reached the semifinals at his home slam in Australia. In 2005, he finally broke through to the Melbourne final. The whole country was behind him. It felt like destiny. And then Marat Safin crushed that dream in 4 sets. Hewitt played well, but Safin's power was too much. That was his last chance at slam glory. From that point, Hewitt was stuck. Too good to fade away, but never good enough to reclaim the biggest stages. Injuries chipped away, and the younger generation passed him by. His two majors, US Open 2001 and Wimbledon 2002, look thin compared to how his career started. Hewitt's fire burned hot early, but in tennis, timing is everything. And his timing collided with Federer and Nadal. Gabriela Sabatini had the full package, a powerful game, a stylish presence on court, and a global fan base that made her one of the most popular players of the late 80s and early 90s. She was a consistent top 10 fixture, reached 3 slam finals, and finally got her breakthrough at the 1990 US Open, where she beat Steffi Graf. But for all her talent, Sabatini never built on that moment. One slam is too few for someone of her ability. The loss that defined her career came a year later at Wimbledon in 1991. She was up against Graf again, and this time, she was in control. Sabatini led by a set and a break, striking cleanly, playing aggressive, and looking like the champion everyone believed she could be. Then the nerves crept in. A few missed shots, hesitation in big moments, and the door opened for Graf. Once Graf grabbed momentum, the match flipped. Sabatini had chances to close it, but couldn't. Graf roared back to take the decider, 8-6. That final was Sabatini's golden ticket. Winning Wimbledon would have changed her entire legacy. Instead, she never returned to another slam final. She kept winning regular tour titles, stayed popular with fans, and retired respected. But when the conversation turns to majors, her resume feels light. One US Open in 1990, when it could have been 3 or 4 more, especially at Wimbledon. Sabatini had the game to be a multi-time champion. What she lacked was the finishing touch when it mattered most. Even Lendl, and here it is, the biggest Grand Slam failure of them all. Evan Lendl. Now let's be clear, Lendl did not scrub. 8-time Grand Slam champion, world number. Won for 270 weeks, a machine of fitness and baseline power who changed the modern game. But for all that dominance, one tournament haunted him forever. Wimbledon. Lendl reached 2 Wimbledon finals in 1986 and 1987. Both times he was supposed to finally do it, to prove he could adapt his baseline game to grass. Both times he fell short, first to Boris Becker, then to Pat Cash, and he never got back. For a guy who made 19 slam finals, never winning Wimbledon feels like a gaping hole in his resume. It became the defining knock on his career. People respected him, feared him, but also whispered, yeah, but he never won Wimbledon. To his credit, Lendl even changed his entire training schedule, skipping clay events to focus on grass, but it never worked. Wimbledon was his white whale, and it stayed out of reach. That's why his failure stings the most. He wasn't a one-slam wonder. He wasn't a wasted talent. He was one of the greatest ever. Yet at the most prestigious slam in tennis, he came up empty.